Welcome to Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, a podcast for people who are ready to clear the physical, the mental, and the emotional clutter that's been weighing them down. I'm Melanie Cohen, your host, coach, and guide. Each week, we talk about the clutter you can see and the clutter you can't. The stuff in your home, the noise in your head, the expectations, habits, and unmade decisions that quietly drain your energy. This isn't about perfection or minimalism. It's about creating space for what actually matters in this season of your life. Let's lighten up together, starting now. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, the podcast where we talk about all things clutter. I'm Melanie Cohen, your host, your coach, and your guide. And today I've brought an expert in on relationships. Let me give her bio and then we're going to dive in. Susannah Ludwig is a relationship coach who helps individuals and families build stronger, more intentional connections. Her work centers on how people show up in their closest relationships, romantic partnerships, family dynamics, and their relationships with themselves. Susanna brings both professional expertise and real-life experience to her coaching. She's known for her calm presence, thoughtful insight, and practical approach to communication, trust, and emotional connection. She helps people untangle old patterns, deepen intimacy, and create relationships that feel grounded and supportive. She supports people in moving forward thoughtfully. My business is called Thoughtfully Coaching. Creating relationships that feel grounded, connected, and aligned with the life they want to live. Susanna, thank you for being here.
So happy to be here. So happy to be here.
This is a long time coming. I want listeners to know Susanna and I met through a previous guest of mine, Aranzis, and we both have been on her podcast. And maybe at the end, we'll do a little plug for the Uplifters this year.
Yeah, please. That's a great idea.
Get someone else to come and join us for that event. Okay, so my podcast is about clutter. And with relationships comes a lot of clutter, right? Okay, so I want you to give a little bit of your story, how you got to where you are, because this is not the first career that you had.
No. Well, first of all, before I do, I'm happy to do that. Thank you for asking. But I just want to say what a fan I am of you, Mel. I am just so inspired and moved by the work you're doing. It's so important. It's so unique and it's so necessary. So I just want to tell you, I'm honored to be in this conversation with you. And also I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I was a film producer, documentary film producer. I loved film production. I have 2 degrees in film production. It was sort of like my first love until it wasn't. And for a lot of reasons, I got older. I was a single mom for a while. It became harder for some reason, the film business has been in a lot of turmoil in the last 10 years, and it was getting harder to make money instead of easier, even though I had done it for a really long time. And I started sort of paying attention to what was lighting me up, what was feeling good, what was keeping me awake at night. And I was being conscious about that and sort of aware of it while still producing and still momming and doing all the things. And a friend called me one day and asked me to have a call with a friend of hers who was going through a similar divorce to mine. And so I did this call with this woman and we started talking every Sunday night for about an hour. And at the end of every call, she would cry and she would say, "Oh my goodness, these calls are sustaining me. You have no idea how much you're helping me. Thank you so much. This is really meaningful." And I knew I was helping her, but I also started noticing that I felt like I was in my purpose and that I was sort of high, almost, which is a funny thing to say, because I knew that my experience and the way that I am with people and the insight that I have into relationships was helping her. And before I knew it, she started referring me to other people. And I all of a sudden had about 6 clients that I was working with. And I decided to become a coach. And I went back and did training. And I've been coaching full time now for the last 8 years, which has been amazing.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, if not most, all of the guests that I've had on my podcast have been people who are not where they started, whether that's, career education or whatever, that there's been some like very interesting circuitous path that took us to where we are. I talk all the time. I started in retail and worked in the fashion industry. And then all of a sudden I was a weight loss coach. And then, full circle for me was, coming back to the whole concept of clutter and clutter not just being stuff. I feel like we're on these paths and we come back around. And I think that also makes us really appreciate where we land. And that's what
Mm,
I'm hearing from
right.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was always on every set that I ever worked on the person, and Aransas actually, we used to be my client many years ago. She could tell you this. I was always the person who people were telling their life story to. Like, we would be producing a commercial and I would be like in the back room with the client hearing all about their children, for example. Or any of the crew. When I hired crew, I was always the one who they were, sharing things with, asking career advice. So being a coach was a supernatural fit. And in some ways, it's what I've always done my whole life. And just like with you, sort of following your natural instincts, I think when we follow who we are naturally and find something that fits with that, then we feel like we're in alignment, a deep alignment. And then it's easy and joyous and fun. Even when it's hard,
Right.
it's still easy and joyous and fun.
For sure. Okay. So let's get back to the clutter.
Yeah. 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 Please.
Okay, so I hear the words relationship clutter, and there's a lot that comes to my mind, and a lot of it based on how I grew up and all of those things. So when you hear the words relationship clutter, what does that make you think, or how does that come up with your clients?
Yeah. I think there's two different types of relationship clutter
Hmm.
that I kind of see in my practice all the time. The first is just what we bring, the baggage we bring, the emotional baggage we bring to our relationship, which has to do with, how we were raised, what our life with our parents was like, what other things happen in our relationship history. So that's one type of clutter, is kind of the backpack that we bring and how that shapes how we see things in our interactions with our partners or with whoever we're in relationship with. And then the second type is the clutter of what we're not saying. So if we are really feeling certain things and having resentments or confusions or insecurities, and we're not being straight up about them, that's a type of emotional clutter. It gets in our way. It really needs to be pared away or cleaned out the same way you would clean out a closet to get down to the truth of what we really mean.
100%. Mm, The clutter is very rarely about the stuff. It's about what we think about the stuff or how we feel about the stuff or how the stuff came to be and how do I release it becomes important. I don't care whether you call it trash, clutter, mess, whatever it is, there's a lot of
Yeah.
it up there. And, if it's true that the self limiting beliefs that are in our heads are all based potentially on things that happened before we were even 7 years old, what do we know at 7 but our parents and their
Right. That's right.
relationship?
That's right.
Is part of that, like, repeating what we saw,
Can be.
good,
Definitely
bad,
can
or
be.
ugly, repeating
Or it
that?
could be that, or it could be going the other way to avoid what we saw and maybe going too far the opposite direction.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, it could be either
I
way.
talk
Yeah.
I talk all the time about my husband and I, like, making the conscious effort that we wanted to do things the
Yeah.
opposite
Yeah.
of all of our parents, and there are a few between us. So, yeah, I can see the potential in trying to go too far, to the
Yeah.
other side, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what if it's not because your work has predominantly been in working in relationships that are
Mm.
love partners,
Yeah.
husbands and wives, etc.
Yeah.
What does that look like when you're working with someone in a different kind of relationship?
It usually is the same
Mhm.
in some degree. Like, I recently worked with a woman and her son who they were having some disconnection around her son's ambitions, basically. Her son wanted to have a certain path and she wanted him to have a different path, and they were fighting. They were not getting along. And underneath all of that really was fear. He was having fear that she didn't trust him to make his own decisions. And she was having fear that he wasn't going to have what he needed in life if he followed the path he wanted to follow. So that is emotional clutter, right? It's like we're all hearing the story of the fear rather than really getting down to the core emotion. And so a lot of what I work with all the time is just getting people to feel comfortable saying what they really need to say, which in that situation was like, I'm scared. I don't want you to have to worry about money. Or I'm upset, mom. I don't think you trust me, and I have to trust myself. When
How
you're not
old was
saying what you really sorry, go ahead.
how old was this young man?
He was in his mid-20s.
Okay. He was a grown
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah,
I appreciate that they knew to come to you and to navigate that because I think there are a lot of people that are at that age in their lives that would not consider doing that. I mean, I'm not gonna pretend I'm like the greatest parent on the planet because I'm sure my kids are gonna listen and be like, "You're not." But my older daughter went away and got her BFA in acting. And on more than one occasion, when I would talk to people about it, either as she was applying and doing all the gazillion auditions
yeah,
or when she was in college, how many people said, wow, that's so cool that you let her do that? First of all, I didn't let her do anything. Okay.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
one is that's what she wanted to do. I wanted to see her happy and thrive. But I also didn't wanna be that parent that then had a terrible relationship with their kid because forced her to go into medicine or engineering or, something like that. I very carefully told her about a suggestion someone had made to me. It was ultimately clear, "Don't do it again." And thank
yeah,
God I had someone else to blame it on, and she may
yeah,
not even remember it, but a friend of mine who works in the theater and recognized what a hard thing she was going into. I had also mentioned that she was like a really, really good math and science student. She was a
yeah,
really good math and science student. And so the joke
yeah,
was that she wasn't going to be a doctor, but she'd play one on TV. The other way around.
yeah,
And he made the recommendation and said she should get I don't know if it's certification or license in accounting or bookkeeping or
yeah,
whatever because she could always have a part-time job doing payroll for a manager or an agent,
yeah.
something
That's a
like
great
that.
idea.
And I mentioned it to her and she was like, "What?" I mean, like, it all came out in venom. Thank God I was like, "Well, I'm just telling you what he said." I'm not even gonna use his name.
Yeah,
I'm just telling you
good
what
to blame someone
he
else.
said.
Yeah, yeah.
But why did I
Yeah,
say
I
it?
mean, yeah,
Because I want him
because you were scared.
I like this mother that you're working with wants
Yes,
to make sure that, like, she can provide for
yes,
herself and not be stressed by money. It's not that she's making
yeah,
money, but that she's not stressed and overwhelmed because I came from
yes,
parents who went bankrupt and
yes,
lost their home, and I don't want that,
yeah,
for my kids. So,
totally.
what other kind of relationships?
I primarily have worked with couples, either
Mhm.
in women in relationship transition or couples. A lot of it is around romantic relationships, and a lot of the work ends up being where people are afraid to be vulnerable. I think vulnerability is really hard, and I think people are afraid often to say how they really feel and to really open themselves up, and they get very stuck behind some defensive story that again usually is an emotional clutter story. They're sort of future tripping about either being abandoned or, the relationship not working out. And so a lot of what I work on is how do we stay present in the now? How do we appreciate each other? How do we communicate that? How do we get super clear about what we want and then ask for it?
Mhm. So I think a lot of people know what it's like to be in therapy for themselves, or more now than before, know what
Yeah.
it's like to work with a coach on their
Yeah.
own. So
Yep.
what does it look like in coaching two people? What should they expect that looks different than like being in regular therapy or coaching or something
Yeah.
like
I mean, I think the main thing is that it's action oriented. So, with all of my couples, they leave a session with an assignment of some kind, whether it be talking through something, coming up with a new strategy about their household, for example, if that's what we're talking about, or instituting a better communication practice between them, or going on a date night, or, I have a long list of things. But it is like therapy in that they come to the session being ready to talk about a problem, but then we come up with an action oriented um, thing that they can do in order to feel their connection and work on it and resolve it.
What's the best client story you have?
I have so many. I'm just trying to think of the best one. And actually today, just right before this, got off the phone with a woman I've been working with for a number of years. This isn't a relational story, but it's a coaching story, and
Okay.
it is leading towards a relational story. When I met this woman, she was probably like maybe 28. She was living with her family. She had a part-time job and was trying to figure out her career and was trying to find community but struggling. Fast forward to now, she moved to a new major city by herself. She got a new job that she loves. She is building a whole community at that job and has like a ton of friends. And today on our call, she was just telling me all the fun social things she was doing. And she's never had a significant relationship. And I would almost put money that she's going to meet a person. It might not be her forever person, but I would bet that in the year of 2026, she's going to meet her person because she is just so ready and open and loving her life and having fun and being in the now. And she told me a story today that she ran into somebody, this guy that she worked with on the street, and they ended up going and having a 2-hour coffee, and she had the most fun coffee with him. And she literally said, um, I'm either going to marry him or he's going to be my best friend. And, from where she was to where she is now is a major amount of growth. And she has consistently showed up and done the work with me every week for like a long time. So I love her so much. I hold her very close to my heart, and I love working with her every week. So that's one.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because it started with this might not be your forever person. Okay. And I feel like we get to a certain age and it's like there's this rush, like I have to find my forever person. And I am not a good judge of all this because I have been with my husband since my freshman
Yeah.
year of college.
Right.
And I don't know that I knew he was my forever person until 5 months in, 6 months in. I mean,
Yeah.
I was still really young, but, like, I had one of those, like, the sun, moon, and stars all aligned moments.
Yeah.
How do you help someone be okay with that next person maybe not being the forever person?
Well, we don't really know. We're not going to know that in the moment,
Right,
right? All we know is that we want to get them ready to have a happy and healthy relationship, and that we have to take one day at a time. And truthfully, in this day and age, for most people, the rules of dating are you got to kiss a few frogs before you meet your prince. That's just, I hate that saying, but it is sort of true. And so for most people, when they meet somebody, it's not necessarily their forever person, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is staying present and being open and enjoying and having fun and accepting whatever the path is going to be.
right, right. I love
Yeah.
that. I know you said you had 2, but I wanna tell
Yeah.
a quick story because
Yeah, please.
I know he listens. I have a cousin
Yeah.
who was in a
Yeah.
very long time relationship, and,
Yeah.
they're still, like, really good friends, really, really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And then he had another relationship, and then he went on a date. I think they met through the apps, and, like, on their first date, they were like, "I think we're gonna be best friends," you know? And they spent so much time together, and they traveled together, they were like best buds.
Yeah.
And then they went on a cruise together and fell in love.
Oh, I love that story.
And they came back and we were like, "Okay." Now, we didn't really know the other
Yeah.
guy. And so when he introduced this guy to us, they tell the story and it was
Yeah.
like, I think it's like one of those when all bets are off moments, you
Yeah.
know? Like you
Yeah.
just released, you let it be.
Yeah.
They got married 3 years ag it'll be 3 years
Aw.
ago this fall, and it was just such a lovely wedding to be at, and
Yeah.
both of them my cousin, he's in his early 60s, and
Wow.
his husband, I think, is somewhere in his mid to late 50s, and, like,
Yeah.
it happens when it
Yeah.
happens, you know?
And also, I think it happens when you stop trying to force it. When you kind of actually, it's so funny because with this client, the mantra that we came up with at the end of our session today, this last client I was talking about, is relax and allow.
Mm.
So when you kind of relax into your life and enjoy where you are and enjoy who you are, then things start coming. People start coming in. And it sounds like with your cousin, he finally just went and relaxed and allowed on the cruise. And then look what happened. And so I think that is a lot of what needs to happen. People get so uptight about, they go on dates and they worry about everything. They're so judgmental about themselves, about the person. And it doesn't work that way. It only works when you kind of settle into your own skin and just have fun.
Yeah, I love that.
So the second one is a woman I've also worked with for a long time. And when she came to me, unfortunately, she had found out about some betrayal that was going on with her and her husband. And I have sort of worked with her through leaving him, moving out, starting over, figuring out the terms of her divorce, figuring out how to co-parent, figuring out how to build her own life, and now finally figuring out how to date. And she is now, it's been a couple years, but she's dating. And, again, she's just enjoying the process. She's just having fun. And it is the most beautiful thing to hear about, because for a long time when that first happened, I remember we had many conversations about, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. How did this happen to me? Like all the things people go through when they go through a situation like that. And my job is to hold the vision of where you can go from here. And I really believe that everybody can have the life they want to have. They just have to put one intentional step in front of the other. And she's super happy now. And actually, pretty recently, she said to me, I can't believe how, I don't even think about him anymore.
That is a big
Yeah.
deal. Okay. All right. But who was hard to work with? Like, what happened?
Yeah. I think the hardest people are people who are not willing to do the work. And what I mean by that is really look at themselves and answer the hard questions when they are super defended for whatever reason and not willing to have some analysis about themselves or push themselves. Those people I can't really help, because in order to get from where you are to where you want to be, you have to do some deep questioning. It's not always easy. And I ask the questions in what I call my special Susanna way, which is super loving, but also direct at the same time. I really want to get in there and get to the bottom of it. And I'm happy to do that. I do it with so much love. It's surrounded by lots of love, but I want to get there. And I don't think there's a shortcut to it other than doing that. And so when someone shows up and they really would rather be in their defended place, there's not anywhere for us to go.
Sure, sure. It reminds me when I introduced the month of February for the
Yeah.
podcast, talking that this was going to be like the self-love and self-care. My approach or my thought is that self-care is better when we're doing the inner work, or that the
Of
inner
course.
work that we do is actually the self-care that we're practicing, whether the
Yeah.
inner work supports us or it supports
Yep.
a relationship or a family or a work
That's right.
relationship. Ooh,
That's
you just made me think about how like some of the hardest relationships are
Yeah.
the people you work with. Have you worked with teams?
Yes, actually, I have. I was just gonna say, have I? But I have. I have worked with a team. I've actually worked with 2 different teams. It's hard. Actually, it's funny. I just saw and saved what was more about being an entrepreneur. A beautiful Sarah Blakely quote about how owning a business is just like being in a relationship, like it challenges you in the same ways. And I think work colleagues can do the same thing. They trigger all the same points. They soothe the same points. It's whatever your one's relationship issues are, they're the same in all of your relationships. With the ones we love, maybe they're bigger because we love them, but they show up the same in every relationship we have.
I love that because, like, some of my favorite people in the world are people I've worked with. Just had a conversation with someone the other day who's like, all of my friends are people I know from work, and still I'm tight with my high school friends. I'm not as tight with college friends as I'd like to be because they're all too far away. And then I have these like amazing relationships that, as a parent, like, them
Yeah,
because the kids did soccer together, they belong to the same
totally.
temple, or they went to school
Yeah,
together or whatever. So I feel like I have like this mosaic filled with people from all over the place. But there's
yeah,
something about the people that you work with that is very different than all of those things. The
yeah.
stress the highs and the lows of work
Yeah.
and all the things. And then you work for yourself and all of a sudden it's very lonely. It can be very isolating. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I navigate that is always by reaching out. So when I feel isolated, I reach out to either another coach that I know, or a friend, or somebody in a similar entrepreneurial role, and just always ask for questions because it can be really isolating. And I guess the other thing I do to try to combat that, well, I mean, I'm sure you feel this way. My job, even though I work for myself, I am interacting with people all day long, every day in my sessions. So I don't feel isolated in that way. But when I start to feel like I need more for me, I schedule something social. So I will schedule like a walk with a friend or a yoga class with a friend or something that, or coffee or something that makes me feel like I'm in a relationship that's, where there's even more give and take than in my coaching relationships. Although my coaching relationships are very dynamic, it's not one way, but the job is to serve the client. You can maybe cut that part out. But anyway, yeah.
No, I think to say the
Yeah.
job is to serve the client is really important. But like,
Yeah.
how often have we heard things like, that the people who are in helping work
Yeah.
are often the people that take the crappiest care of themselves?
Yes, that's true. Yeah. You know what's so interesting? I was just saying to a client the other day, one of the things that's been so good for me about being a coach is that I really feel like I have to take the best care of myself in order to do this job well. Because otherwise, I'm number one, otherwise, I physically couldn't do it. But even more than that, I'd be totally inauthentic. If I'm talking to my clients about, moving their bodies or drinking water or having more sex or any of the things, I have to be living that same life myself. Otherwise, I'm just talking bullshit, which I'm not interested in doing. So it's forced me to walk the walk and talk the talk.
I love that. I think one of the things that was valuable for me as a weight loss coach
Yeah.
was having lost the weight, having been overweight, having felt fat, hated myself, the whole 9 yards, made me really great making someone feel seen and heard and knowing that they weren't going to get embarrassment or shame from me.
Yeah.
There were still those that
Yeah.
thought that they were going to be judged no matter what they did. And it was because they really needed to do a lot of inner work. I feel the
Yeah.
same when it comes to the
Yeah.
clutter work. How many people are
Yeah.
like afraid, like, don't look, you know, don't look
Yeah. Yeah.
behind, the
Right.
camera. And
Yeah.
again, I'm not here to judge and shame because I've been there, I've done that, I've lived it, I've
Yeah.
breathed it. I would imagine that there are great similarities in
Yeah.
being a relationship coach.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, listen, I was married to somebody for 20 years. Our marriage didn't work out. It ended. And then I was single in my 40s for 5 years. I got divorced at age 40, so almost 41. So I was single at like prime time, had to relearn how to date, had to be out in the world to do that. And then I eventually met my new husband. And then we went through a whole, dating and courting and then getting married. So I've been there, and I think that does help when I'm talking to my clients about all the things about divorce, about thinking through how you want to date and being intentional about dating. And then when you're in a new relationship, really taking the blessing of learning. Because that's the really cool thing about dating is that it can be. I was just sharing this with actually a friend, not she's not a client, but a friend of mine who is just newly dating after many years of not. I was sharing that dating is a mirror, really, because you're seeing yourself through the eyes of the person in a new way that you've never seen. And it opens up so much possibility for your own growth if you see it that way. So, yeah, I bring all of that to the table. And I really believe that if we show up sort of loving and curious, that we can make any relationship work for the most part. Any relationship with two people who are willing to do that. I'll say that.
The other person has to be willing to do the work also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. I
Yeah.
sometimes wonder, like, I feel like I'm at that point in my life where my husband knows every story. I
Yeah.
know every story of
Yeah.
his. Like, how boring is that? Like, I think, oh, you've never heard. No, you've told me that one
Yeah.
before, Mel.
Yeah.
Like, if I was dating, where do I start? There's so
Yeah.
many. What makes this relationship that you're in now different? If you don't mind sharing.
I have an idea for you and your husband with what you just said. I'll get
Ooh,
back to that.
okay.
My husband is an amazing communicator. And we are just in constant, very clear communication with each other about everything, whether it be like what we're having for dinner or how we feel about any issue, up to our work, our kids. We have 4 kids between us, anything, our parents. Thank God we have 3 parents still alive. And we just are constantly talking about all of it all the time. And that is really different than my first marriage. My first marriage, it was just as much me as it was him, but we weren't talking as much. And so there was a lot of things that were unsaid, hard things that were unsaid, and a lot of resentment that was built on both sides, I think. And resentment is like the number one relationship killer. So this relationship feels much freer because even when there are hard things, we have like a process for getting through them as a team, which is around our how we talk about it all.
I love that. I mean,
Yeah,
you found the guy. You
I
you
did.
found the
I
guy. That's
did, and we're about to celebrate our 10th anniversary, like, in 10 days, so I'm so excited about that.
okay.
Yeah.
So, advice for the woman who's about to celebrate her 31st anniversary.
Yeah, okay. So here's an idea. You probably have already done this because both seem very adventurous. But maybe plan something that would be new to both of you, like a trip or learning something that you're both interested in, or something that would allow you to explore new parts of yourselves, but as a team. Because I think it instead of there being all the old stories, you could explore each other in a new way that you might not have thought of before.
Right. I think we do a decent job of that, but I feel like the newest thing in our life recently has been my new career, my job, and
Yeah.
he's just really happy for ChatGPT because he
Aw.
doesn't have to edit everything. I mean, he has been my editor since I was 18 because when we were in college, he was an English major. So, of course, asked him to edit
Amazing.
my papers for me. I was not an English major. But, I'm going to just use like a quick and easy example. My daughter gifted me for my birthday last year a tour and history lesson at Fort Hamilton Distillery. So we went
Cool.
and we learned about the history of whiskey and bourbon in the United States, the difference between whiskey and bourbon, who brought it here. Obviously,
So
Hamilton
fun.
came up in the conversation.
Yeah.
And we got to do a tasting. I got to bottle my own, which was like so good. And I
Oh
got to
my
put the
god.
label on it and date it and
Amazing.
all. Yeah, it was awesome. And it was like something that both of us came in at pretty much the same level, as
Yeah.
opposed to where
Yeah.
one is more knowledgeable than the other. And I think
Yeah.
that that was part of what made it
Yeah.
fun. And we also travel really well together,
Good.
except we would never do something like The Amazing Race together because my patience is low and my threshold for cursing is really high. And one of the reasons our relationship works is for people who know me, they know like I'm loud,
Yeah.
I'm out
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and my husband is the mellow to my mega,
Yeah. I love that. I
And
love
some of
that.
that may be having grown up in Hawaii. I don't think that everybody in Hawaii is like mellow and calm and everything,
Yeah.
but he doesn't like to make decisions. He's just like, whatever you want.
Aw, so
Drives my
sweet.
kids crazy though. They're like,
Yeah.
come on, dad, what do you want to do for your birthday? I don't know. What do you guys want to do? But that also, so like for everything that's really
Yeah.
great, of course, there's something that can be a downside as
Of
long as you've figured
course.
out how to navigate that.
Yes, absolutely.
I have done way
Absolutely.
more therapy in my life than he has, but I
Yeah.
know that if we hit a rough patch,
Yeah.
he would 100% be like, okay, let's go out there and get a relationship coach.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, cool. So, what have we missed? Like, what have we not said about
Yeah.
relationships and coaching and clutter?
Okay, so one thing I'll say is I would really recommend that most couples, and again, I'm happy to work with any relational two people, but I'll just say this about couples because I think it's kind of where there's like some stereotypes or things that get in the way. For most couples, by the time they get to see a relationship coach or a therapist, it's pretty late. So I would recommend if there is a pattern that keeps coming up or like a bump that seems repetitive or some way that you're passing and you're just like not able to connect with your person, see a relationship coach sooner rather than later. It doesn't mean your relationship is ending. It actually means the opposite. It doesn't mean that you can't figure it out. But sometimes it's useful to have a third person who can help you. Because what I love about working with couples or anybody relationally is I can see from where I sit what the pieces are that need to come back together. And people are often afraid that if they admit they need to go to get help, that it means their relationship is doomed. And that's not the case. It actually, getting those tools with somebody else can be a superpower for your relationship.
For sure. Part of what I hear in that is waiting to go to the doctor until you're sick, as opposed to
Exactly.
having checkups and things like that. But I think my other takeaway on it is like the difference between therapy and coaching. Like, why do you go to therapy? There needs to be a diagnosis, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. But that
Yes.
there's something that sounds much easier or more open by saying we're going to
Yes.
a relationship coach. It doesn't sound broken.
Yes.
It seems like it's something you're
Yes.
building and taking action on.
That's right. That's right. Listen, I love hearing whatever people want to tell me. I'm so happy to talk about your early life, your childhood, all of that stuff. But really, the focus of coaching is more about where you want to go, where you are now and where you want to go, than it is on unpacking all of that past stuff. That past stuff, there's a place for it. It's important. I do like to know it because it helps me and informed to understand who each
Mm.
person is. But we don't spend a ton of time in all of that. We more talk about, okay, you're here. What is the thing that's getting in the way of you going there? Now let's go there. And I think it is lighter and it's easier for people.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I wrote something down earlier while you were talking. I don't know what
Yeah.
led me to it, but I wrote the word matchmaker down. I think part of the reason I wrote it down was like I have a goal of interviewing a matchmaker. It's something that's so fascinating to me, and
Yeah.
especially in the world of apps. I love the idea of using a person, like a human being.
Yes.
You know
Totally.
what? I believe in algorithms. I believe in all of that kind of stuff, but you can't you can't talk through
Yeah.
an app. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if someone tells
Yeah.
you that they're looking for a matchmaker, do you have someone that you send them to, or do you encourage certain things or certain spaces?
I do think in religious spaces, it can be even more useful.
Mhm.
Because I do think that when somebody has a set of beliefs that are really important to how they live their life, then having a matchmaker who's in that community could work. I don't have a specific person. The ones I've heard about, for example, in New York, are very expensive. Most of the clients I've worked with don't have sort of that kind of income. I do know one person who tried to use one. I don't think it worked. I think it's fascinating though. And when you think about like Indian culture, Jewish culture, I mean, they've been doing it for hundreds of years. It's a very noble profession.
A very dear friend of ours, was matched with his wife.
Uh-huh.
And I remember the first time I heard, I thought it was weird. And then I remembered who he is. And he's Indian. And I think, if I remember correctly, like he gave himself like an age. Like if I'm at this point and I haven't met someone, then I will go through the matchmaking process. But one of the favorite TV shows in our house was the Indian matchmaking show.
I love that show. It was a great
She
show.
is so funny. I love her. And I
That's
love
a good
watching the
show.
process. And to the point you made, these are very wealthy people, but no matchmaker gets a show without being like
Right.
the
Yeah.
auntie. The
Totally.
auntie. Oh,
Totally.
I loved that
Yeah.
show.
Used to love that Patty Stranger show on Bravo, you know? She was like the millionaire matchmaker.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Did you ever watch
Mhm.
that show?
Yes.
That was a good show.
I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I think it was Patty Stranger or something like that. Yeah.
Patty Stranger. That's so funny, stranger. Introducing strangers. Okay.
So funny.
So this is the podcast about clutter. And I
Yes.
warn every guest, whether they remember or not, that I'm going to
Yeah.
ask them about their clutter. And I
Okay.
always say, I say the same thing over and over again because I never know when someone's listening for the first time. That when I'm
Yeah.
asking someone about clutter, I am not necessarily asking them about overflowing closets, piles of paper, or boxes of
Yeah.
photographs, but rather the digital clutter, the calendar clutter, the commitment clutter, the 24-hour
Yeah.
news cycle clutter, the social media clutter. Like I'm talking
Yeah.
about any clutter to me is anything that creates a block, whether it's a mental or physical block. So Having
Yeah.
said that, what's your clutter?
Well, I don't it doesn't really bother me, but I don't know if it's a block exactly, but my mail inbox is insane. Like, I have, like, hundreds of thousands of emails in my email inbox. It doesn't bother me. You know what? I think it stopped bothering me in COVID. It started building up a couple years before that, around when the time when I met my husband. And before that, I used to be, like, a really on top of my email, and then when I met my husband, something shifted in me where I just really cared more about my personal life than I did about being so perfectionistic about my
Mhm.
work.
Right, right.
And I loosened up in a way at that time. And when that happened, I just stopped caring. I mean, I very rarely let an important email go. But so, like, most of the time, not always, I have missed things, but most of the times I see the emails I need to see.
Right.
Um, but I literally have a couple 100,000. And I have at times thought, like, I should do something about that. I should clear it out or hire someone to help me. But
Should,
then I
should,
don't know.
should, should, should,
Right.
should, should.
Right. But then it doesn't bother me enough to really do it.
Well, and I think that's really powerful because, so I have 3 email accounts that I use actively. There's the one that I've
Yeah.
had since Google started, like 98,
Yeah.
99, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And then I have the one that I started when I started looking for work, and the email address Mellow Mouth wasn't the most professional approach to email. So I now have a
Yeah.
melanie.list.cohen at Gmail. And then
Yeah.
when I started my business, I wanted to make sure that the email address had my business name in
And
it.
stuff.
And
Yeah.
the Mellow Mouth one is where all the junk goes. And
Yeah.
I tested myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to do something about this. And
Yeah.
I got the Mellow Mouth account down to 38 unread emails.
Wow. Wow.
Right. And of
That's
course, I woke
amazing.
up the next morning and it was like 70 again, which is,
Oh
I've
my gosh.
also, for me, cleaning up the email also afforded me to spend less money. And I've
Yeah.
talked about it. We've done digital
Yeah.
episodes
I
before,
listened to your
but like
episode
when
about
I'm
that.
getting emails from Gap and Banana Republic and
Yeah.
Sephora, it doesn't mean I'm going to shop, but the incentive's there. And I
Yeah.
realized we just started pricing flights to go to Florida in May for a bar mitzvah. And I realized I started and then all of a sudden the emails are
Yeah.
coming in my social media, like every suggestion is
Yeah.
Orbitz or Expedia or whatever. And I'm not gonna like buy a trip just because the email came.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? When they do those flash sales and you see,
Yeah.
like you could do 149 round trip, which was like what it was when you and I were in high
Right.
school.
Right.
I think that there's a lot to be said for like cleaning that
Yeah.
stuff out. I just had a really hard
Yeah.
time deleting it because for some reason there was going to be an email in that box from 20 years ago that was going to have something really
Yeah.
important in it. And at the end of
Yeah.
the
I have that
day,
fear too.
if I hadn't like, as I deleted back, the 38 that were still in there were all things like emails people had sent photographs from our daughter's bat mitzvahs that they had taken with their own cameras that I just hadn't
Yeah.
done anything with. And I'm not gonna beat myself
Yeah.
up over that. I know what to do with photo
Yeah.
clutter and all that
Yeah.
stuff. I like to play with stats on clutter because sometimes it really helps people
Yeah.
understand the impact. And the
Yeah.
current research says that the average American has like 1,500 unread emails. That number is not accurate.
Yeah. There's no way.
Percent, it's 10 times that, you know? So I don't know where that number's coming from. I keep watching to see if new numbers are coming out from any resource. You only work on the clutter if the clutter is a block for you. You named it. You're like, "Yeah, I have a lot of them, but it doesn't bother me." And what happens if it does start bothering you? Then you
And I'll do something about it. Yeah. My texts, like, I have 0 unread texts, and, like, I feel like the people who need to reach me know how to reach me, and I say when I'm working with somebody, "If I don't respond to your email, text me," because I'm fast on the text. I'm a little
Mhm,
slower on the email, but I get to it eventually, and I
right.
do have a system where that sort of works. I guess I have learned a bit about for me, there's been a journey around perfectionism because as a younger person, I was very hard on myself all the time about everything.
Right.
And part of my own work has been to kind of loosen up about as many things as I can.
I am a perfectionist in recovery. And what
Yeah,
that means is it will
sure.
never be fixed, just a reminder that nothing is going to be perfect. There's no way to make it perfect, but that need for perfection can paralyze you from getting anything done.
Yes. Yes.
whatever that path is.
Yes. Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
oh, I'm so happy you were here today. All right.
I loved
Use
it.
anything. Like, oh my God, listeners need to know.
Okay. So I would love to help anybody who has a relationship challenge or problem that they would like some help with. I think you'll mention all the places you can reach me. But one last thing I do want to mention is that I run a monthly free support group for women in relationship transition. And what that means is women who are thinking about divorce, newly divorced, have been divorced, but are starting to date or are newly dating. So they're in some sort of transition around their relationships. It's a free once a month, 1 hour on Zoom. And I'm actually creating a retreat I've been doing it for about 2 years, and I'm creating a retreat for the women who come, but it's open to anybody at any time. It's called Support Circles. And if you're interested in that, you can email me directly and I can send you more information about it.
All of your information is going to be in the show notes. And
Great.
I
Thank
am
you.
certain there's someone who's been listening to this episode and you just have like I always say, my husband is the mellow to my mega.
Yeah.
You also. Like, if I needed a relationship,
Uh,
I would want someone who's easy and calm spoken.
but I feel really lucky, as I know you do, to get to do what we love. And I think when you talk to either one of us, you feel that, which is really nice.
I love being in a heart-centered business. Thank you
Sure.
for being here today.
So much for having me. It was really so much fun.
Susanna and I want to invite you to a special event on Friday, March 13th, 2026. Hey, that's my birthday. This event is on that day because the amazing Aranza Savas also has her birthday on Friday, March 13th, 2026. And we want you to be at this event because it is a day that she created because she needed it. A full day away from her desk trying to figure everything out alone. And if you're like that, I want you to know that this is a day to be in a room with kind and smart and purpose-driven women who are in the middle of life. This is an opportunity to talk honestly, to learn from each other, to remember what's possible when we work together. Every year that I have participated, I leave with new ideas, new connections, re-energized for my work and for my life in general. And if you're craving a day like this too, you can get your tickets using the link in the show notes. I so hope you spend our birthday with us. Thank you for listening to Lighten Up the Art of Living Clutter-Free. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use just a little bit of lightness. If you're ready for deeper support, you can work with me one-on-one or join my Lighten Up Clutter-Free Mindset Group program. You can find all the details at my website, thoughtfullycoaching.com. Until next time, progress over perfection. Messy action is better than no action at all. So let's lighten up.